My envious sister called me a gold digger and tried to destroy my BF's career. Imagine your own sister, the one who was supposed to be family, not only trying to destroy your happiness but actively sabotaging your boyfriend's entire career. My name is Lindsay, and I'm 29, but for most of my life, I felt like I was just a shadow, living in the endless glare of my older sister, Melanie. She's 34 now, and it's always been this way. Every achievement of hers was celebrated like a national holiday, while my own quiet passions and accomplishments were barely a whisper. My parents, bless their hearts, just couldn't see past their golden child. I remember Melanie effortlessly gliding through childhood, star of every play, captain of every team, straight-A student. The girl they couldn't stop bragging about. And me. I was just Lindsay, the quiet one, the girl with her sketchbook. I poured my soul into art because it was the one thing that felt truly mine, the one place I thought I could shine. But even that wasn't enough. I was just 12 when my middle school art teacher told my mom I had real talent, that I could even get a college scholarship. My chest swelled with pride, hope blooming. But when we got home, my mom just smiled that tight, dismissive smile and said, "That's nice, honey, but art isn't a real career. Melanie's already studying for the SATs. Maybe focus on something practical." Practical? I was 12. I didn't want practical. I just wanted them to be proud of me. The favoritism wasn't just emotional, it was tangible. Melanie got everything. Piano lessons, tutors, expensive summer camps she didn't even seem to enjoy. For me, funding was tight, they claim. I asked for painting lessons, even cheap ones at the community center. "No, we just can't afford it right now, Lindsay," was the constant refrain. Yet, somehow, they managed to buy Melanie a brand new car when she turned 16. My 16th birthday, I actually convinced myself it was my turn. Maybe they'd surprise me too. Instead, I got a sweater. A sweater. I'm not saying every kid deserves a car, but then Melanie came home from college with a flat tire, and guess who spent hours watching my dad fix her car while my untouched birthday cake sat forgotten on the counter? Happy birthday to me, right? It wasn't just the material things. It was the relentless emotional neglect. My mother would gush to Melanie, "You're so beautiful, so smart, you're going to do amazing things." I can't even remember the last time she said anything remotely like that to me. When I landed my first job at a small graphic design agency, a huge step for me, my mom's reaction was, "That's nice, but when are you going back to school?" You know, Melanie got her master's. I once tried to talk to my dad about it. He's quieter, more passive than my mom. I asked him, genuinely, why it felt like they loved Melanie more. He just groaned, looked uncomfortable, and said, "We don't love her more, Lindsay. She just needs us more." What? What the heck does that even mean? Melanie, who had everything handed to her, needed them more? If anyone needed assistance, it was me. As we got older, the chasm between us grew wider. Melanie soared. Ivy League degree, high-paying finance job, a dazzling engagement ring from her equally beautiful fiancé. And me? I felt stuck. My art career wasn't taking off the way I dreamed, and every family visit was another barrage of, "So what's next?" As if anything I'd done wasn't enough. One of the most humiliating moments happened last Thanksgiving. Melanie and her fiancé, Jason, were over for dinner. My parents pulled out all the stops, prime rib, fine wine, the works. I, not much of a cook, was incredibly proud of the pumpkin pie I'd baked from scratch. When I placed it on the table, my mom gave me that tight little smile. "Oh, sweetie, that's nice, but Melanie brought a cheesecake from that bakery downtown. Everyone loves their desserts." Guess which one was devoured first? Melanie's, of course. The worst part, Melanie not only soaked up all the adoration, she pretended not to notice. She'd act oblivious to the blatant partiality, but I knew. She loved being the center of attention. Years ago, I tried to confront her. I told her it was unfair that Mom and Dad treated us so differently. She just gave me those wide, innocent eyes and said, "Lindsay, you're being ridiculous. Mom and Dad love us equally." Then, naturally, she posted a picture on Instagram with the caption, "My parents are the best," over a photo of a brand new watch they bought her, just because. I felt gaslit my entire life. Every time I tried to express my feelings, it was met with denial. "You're overreacting, Lindsay." Or saccharine sympathy. "Oh, you poor thing." As if I were a fragile flower unable to handle my own emotions. It was exhausting. I started drifting away from my family, skipping gatherings, calling my mom only to hear the latest about Melanie's successes. I tried to focus on my painting again, desperate to rekindle the passion that their relentless comparisons had slowly drained from me. But it was hard. No matter how much I pulled away, that voice in the back of my head screamed, "You'll never be good enough." I constantly wondered, was I crazy for feeling this way? Was it wrong to want my parents to see me for who I was, not for who I wasn't compared to Melanie? Or was I truly doomed to live forever in her shadow? Then, after years of feeling trapped and invisible, something finally shifted. I found my footing. I'd been working as a freelance graphic designer, slowly building a portfolio I was genuinely proud of. It wasn't glamorous, but I loved it. For the first time, I felt truly in control, free from Melanie's incessant comparisons. And that's when I met Zach. It was a chance encounter at a small business exhibition. I was awkwardly hovering near a kiosk, pretending to be engrossed in some pamphlets, when he approached me. He was tall, with dark hair that had just the right amount of distinguished gray at the temples, and he exuded an easy confidence I immediately noticed. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else," he said, a smirk playing on his lips. I laughed, a little embarrassed. "Is it that obvious?" He introduced himself as Zach, founder of a modest but thriving tech startup. We talked, and I learned he was 36, self-made, and built his business from the ground up. Unlike so many people I'd met at these events, he wasn't pretentious or overbearing. When I told him about my graphic design work, he actually listened, asking thoughtful questions about my process and clients. It was incredibly refreshing. We kept in touch for a few weeks. Zach was more than just charming. He was smart, ambitious, and genuinely interested in me. He hired me to create some branding materials for his company, and working with him was incredible. He treated me as an equal, something I wasn't used to after years of Melanie's subtle dominance. When we officially started dating, it felt like a breath of fresh air. For the first time, I was seen as Lindsay, just Lindsay. Not Melanie's sister, not the less successful daughter, just me. He didn't care about my family dynamics or the baggage I carried. He simply cared about me. Of course, Melanie had to ruin it. At first, my parents were cautiously enthusiastic about Zach. They loved his success, though my mom couldn't resist a few snarky remarks like, "Well, he's a bit older, isn't he? Or I hope he's serious about you." Melanie, on the other hand, despised him from the jump. I should have known. Melanie thrives on being the center of attention, the one everyone envies. Zach's accomplishments threatened her. She couldn't believe I had found someone not only kind and supportive, but also incredibly successful in his own right. So, in classic Melanie fashion, she set out to create drama. It started subtly. During a family dinner, Melanie remarked, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Oh, how convenient that you met Zach while working on a project for him. So, did you land the guy and the client?" I tried to brush it off, but her implication was crystal clear. She thought I was dating Zach purely for his money. Things escalated quickly. Melanie started spreading rumors throughout our family, claiming Zach was some sort of sugar daddy. She even told my parents I was using him to escape my dismal career. "I just think Lindsay's rushing into things," she'd say, feigning concern. "It's not like she's ever dated someone like Zach before. You have to admit, it's a big step up." And the worst part, my parents believed her. My mom confronted me one night. "Lindsay," she asked, her tone heavy with fake concern, "are you sure Zach is the right man for you? He's so established. I just don't want you to get hurt if this doesn't work out." My blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" I demanded. "Zach and I are happy. Why can't you just let me have this, Mom?" She hesitated. "It's just..." Melanie mentioned some things. Of course she did. I practically screamed. Because Melanie can't stand it when the attention isn't on her. I stormed out that night, but the damage was done. The seeds of mistrust had been sown, and no matter how much I defended myself, it felt like my family had already made up their minds. The rumors didn't stop there. Melanie started sharing them with mutual friends, people I hadn't spoken to in years. One day, I got a call from Sarah, an old high school classmate. "Hey, Lindsay," she said, her voice nervous. I just wanted to check in. I heard some things about Zach, and I wanted to make sure you're okay. My heart pounded. Wait, what things? I asked, utterly confused. Sarah hesitated. Well, Melanie mentioned that Zach might be, controlling. She said you've been spending all your time with him and barely talking to your family anymore. I just wanted to make sure everything's all right. I was furious. Sarah, that's not true. Zach is nothing like that. Melanie, just... I stopped, realizing it was pointless. Melanie had already done her damage. When I confronted her, she played the victim, of course. I was just worried about you, she claimed, wide-eyed and innocent. I didn't mean for it to get blown out of proportion. You know how people love to gossip. You're the one who started the gossip. I yelled. Why can't you just be happy for me for once? But Melanie didn't care. She never did. All she cared about was tearing me down, keeping me in that shadow where she believed I belonged. Through it all, Zach was my unwavering rock. Lindsay, he told me one night as we sat on his couch, you don't owe anyone an explanation for our relationship. Not your parents, not Melanie, not anyone. The people who really care about you will see the truth. He saw how much it was hurting me and did everything he could to build me up. I wanted to believe him, but it was hard. Melanie's lies made me feel increasingly isolated. Even some of my closest friends grew distant, unsure what to think. It felt like a lost battle, and Melanie was winning. But Zach was right. Those who genuinely cared stood by me. My best friend, Emily, was a fierce ally. When she heard Melanie's nonsense, she called me instantly. Lindsay, this is ridiculous, she said. Anyone who knows you knows you're not that kind of person. Melanie's just jealous. She can't stand that you're happy. Hearing those words meant more to me than I could ever express. For the first time in weeks, I felt less alone. Zach, for his part, refused to be swayed. If anything, the rumors only strengthened us. He saw right through Melanie's tactics and wouldn't let her harm our relationship. She can say whatever she wants, he told me. At the end of the day, the only thing that matters is us. He was absolutely correct. Melanie could spread as many stories as she liked, but she couldn't take away what Zach and I had built. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just Lindsay, the other sister. I was Lindsay, the woman who had found love and happiness despite every toxic thing Melanie had thrown at her. Now, I used to think things couldn't possibly get worse after Melanie's initial rumors about Zach. I was so wrong. Melanie wasn't just content to ruin my family's opinion of me. She launched a full-blown social media campaign, dragging my name through the mud for all the world to see. It started subtly, as most of Melanie's schemes did. She'd share a photo of herself and Jason, her husband, in front of their huge suburban home, with a caption like, "It's amazing what you can achieve with hard work and dedication. Some of us don't need shortcuts." I knew it was about me. The timing was perfect. Zach and I had just shared photos from a weekend trip to Napa Valley, which Melanie would have undoubtedly seen. I tried to ignore her posts, but they grew more pointed. A few days later, another photo, Melanie holding an expensive handbag. Bought this with my own money, because some of us don't rely on others to fund our lifestyles. But the absolute worst, a photo of her in her girl boss garage, a smug smile on her face, holding a coffee cup that read Girl Boss. The caption, "It's amazing how some people will do anything for a free life." Her friends and acquaintances chimed in, some even tagging me directly. I was seething, but I wasn't sure what to do. Part of me wanted to publicly confront her, to defend myself, but Zach urged me not to. "She's baiting you," he said. "If you respond, you're giving her exactly what she wants." He was right, of course, but that didn't make it any easier. Every time I opened social media, there it was, her smug face, passive-aggressive captions, and an army of enablers. It felt like she was waging war against me, and I felt utterly defenseless. A few weeks later, things escalated dramatically during a family dinner. My parents had invited everyone over for what they called a relaxing evening. I should have known better. Nothing about being in the same room with Melanie could ever be relaxing. She was on edge the moment Zach and I walked in. She greeted us with a phony smile and an overly bright, "Oh, hi, you too," but her tone was dripping with sarcasm. She barely acknowledged Zach, focusing her entire attention on Jason, gushing about his career, their upcoming vacation, and his plans to remodel their already exquisite kitchen. Dinner started off innocently enough. My mom had prepared her signature roast chicken, and the conversation was mostly small talk. But Melanie, ever the limelight seeker, decided it was time to stir the pot. She leaned back in her chair, swirling her wine glass like a villain in a soap opera. "You know," she drawled, "it's funny. I was talking to one of my friends the other day, and she mentioned how some people are just living the dream of all money hunters." The table went silent. My father coughed awkwardly. My mother shot Melanie a warning glance, but she completely ignored it. "I mean," Melanie continued, her gaze locked on mine, "imagine finding someone who's willing to pay for everything, your vacations, your lifestyle, even your career. Must be nice, right?" Zach stiffened beside me. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, but I refused to let her see me crack. "Are you trying to say something, Melanie?" I asked, keeping my voice as quiet as I could. "Oh no, of course not," she responded, all wide-eyed innocence. "I'm just making an observation. Some people just have all the luck." "Luck has nothing to do with it," Zach interjected, his voice low but forceful. "Lindsay works hard, and she doesn't need to rely on anyone to support her." Melanie scoffed. "Oh, I'm sure she does. I mean, graphic design is such a stable and lucrative career path. I'm sure you don't help out at all, right?" "Enough!" My mother's voice sliced through the tension like a dagger. "Melanie, stop it. This isn't appropriate." But Melanie wasn't done. She slammed her glass down with a bit too much vigor, the sound reverberating around the room. "I'm just being honest, Mom. Isn't that what we're supposed to do as a family? Be honest with each other." I couldn't take it anymore. I sprang up so fast my chair almost crashed over. "Honesty," I spat, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. "You wouldn't know honesty if it hit you in the face. All you know how to do is tear people down because you can't stand it when the spotlight isn't on you." "Lindsay, don't," Zach murmured calmly, placing his hand on my arm. But I was beyond caring. "Do you know what your problem is, Melanie?" I asked, my voice quivering. "You can't stand the fact that someone else might actually be happy for once. You thrive on making other people feel small because that's the only way you can feel big." Melanie's face flushed crimson, but she remained silent for once. My father started saying something about everyone needing to calm down, but I didn't want to hear his half-hearted attempts at mediation. I grabbed my coat and turned to Zach. "Let's go." We left without another word, the tension in the room so heavy I felt like I was suffocating. The moment we got into the car, I burst into tears. "I can't do this anymore," I sobbed. "I can't keep pretending everything's fine when she's destroying my life." Zach pulled me into his arms, his words a calming balm. "You don't have to. You don't owe her, or anyone else in your family, anything. You've worked hard for what you have, and you don't need to justify it to anyone, least of all Melanie." He was right, of course. But as much as I wanted to wipe Melanie out of my life entirely, I knew it wouldn't be that easy. She was more than just my sister. She was my parents' darling, their golden child. Cutting her out would mean cutting them out, and I wasn't sure I was prepared for that. The next few days were a blur of emotions: rage, despair, frustration. I blocked Melanie on all social media platforms, refusing to see another one of her passive-aggressive posts. But the damage was done. Friends and acquaintances who had seen her posts were immediately asking questions, their tone tinged with thinly veiled condemnation. "You're not actually dating him for his money, are you?" one of them asked me directly. "No," I snapped. "I'm not." But the stories lingered, and Melanie's shadow felt larger than ever. No matter how hard I tried to escape, it felt like she was always one step ahead, ready to drag me down. After that horrible family meal, I knew I couldn't keep putting myself through Melanie's games. Every interaction with her felt like a landmine waiting to detonate, and I was done falling into her traps. Zach and I talked it over, and we both agreed, for my own sanity, I needed to take a step back. I needed to set boundaries, even if it meant missing family occasions. The first test came a few weeks later. My parents announced a cookout. "It'll be fun," my mother chirped over the phone, her tone far too enthusiastic. "Jason and Melanie are coming, and you can bring Zach. We haven't seen you two in ages." I paused. "I don't think that's a good idea, Mom." She let out an impatient sigh, making me feel like a troublesome child. Oh, Lindsay, don't be like this. It's just a little barbecue. You're not still upset about what Melanie said, are you? Am I still upset? I asked incredulously. Mom, she basically accused me of being a gold digger in front of the entire family, and that's not even mentioning all the crap she's been posting online. My mom dismissed it with a giggle. Oh, honey, you know how Melanie is. She doesn't mean half of what she says. You two just need to talk things out. No, Mom, I replied, my voice firm. What I need is for her to stop attacking me every chance she gets. Until that happens, I'm not going to any event where she's present. There was a long pause. Finally, she said, Well, I think you're overreacting, but if that's how you feel. It wasn't the apology I longed for, but she didn't push further. Zach and I spent that weekend hiking instead, enjoying the solitude and quiet, far from Melanie's toxic presence. My absence, however, did not go unnoticed. A few days later, my father called. His tone was pleasant, but with that familiar hint of disappointment I'd heard so many times before. Lindsay, your mother told me you didn't come to the barbecue because of Melanie. Is that true? Yes, Dad, I said, bracing myself for the scolding. Lindsay, he replied, she's your sister. Families fight sometimes, but that doesn't mean you just walk away. Your mom and I raised you both better than that. I felt a knot tighten in my throat. Dad, this isn't just a fight. This is years of Melanie tearing me down, and I'm not going to put up with it anymore. I have to protect myself. He sighed. I get that you're upset, but don't let this destroy the family. You two need to find a way to work things out. Destroy the family. The word struck me like a punch in the gut. It was the same guilt trip tactic my parents had used my entire life to keep me in line, and I was sick of it. I'm not the one destroying the family, Dad, I murmured, my voice trembling. If you want to blame someone, blame Melanie. But he didn't. He never would. Over the next 2 months, I stuck to my decision. I politely declined any invitations from my parents to events where Melanie would be present. Let us know when you're hosting something without Melanie, I'd suggest. They never did. Every time I turned them down, they'd accuse me of being harsh, insisting Melanie was doing her best, and I was letting a minor misunderstanding destroy everything. What they didn't realize, or refuse to recognize, was that this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a pattern of behavior that had persisted my entire life, and I was not going to continue submitting myself to it just to keep the peace. The distance from my family was difficult, but it also allowed me to focus on myself. I immersed myself in my business, taking on new clients, building my portfolio. Zach was my biggest supporter, always there to encourage me and remind me of my worth when I doubted myself. Slowly, steadily, I began to reclaim my identity. Lindsay, the artist, the partner, the woman who didn't need her family's approval to be complete. Now, if you're still with me, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because trust me, more unbelievable stories are coming. Melanie, on the other hand, was not satisfied with the status quo. One afternoon, Emily, my best friend, called me. Hey, have you seen Melanie's latest post? She asked, her tone tinged with alarm. No, I replied, my stomach sinking. What did she do now? Emily hesitated. She posted this picture from your parents' anniversary dinner, and the caption said, Some of us actually show up for our family. Watch your family first. I groaned. Unbelievable. She can't stand that I'm not playing her game anymore, so now she's trying to make me look like the bad guy. Emily sighed. I know it's hard, but don't let her get to you. You're doing the right thing by setting boundaries. I wanted to believe her, but guilt gnawed at me. Every time I saw a picture of my family without me, every time I heard my mother's disappointed tone or my father's angry sighs, I felt as if I had failed them. It didn't matter that I was defending myself. Part of me still craved their acceptance and validation. The breaking point came a few weeks later. My parents invited Zach and me to dinner. It'll just be the 4 of us, Mom said. No Melanie, no drama. I reluctantly agreed. I wanted to believe they were finally listening, finally understanding. But when we arrived, there was a 5th place setting on the table. My heart plummeted. Please tell me that's not for who I think it is, I whispered. Before my mother could respond, the doorbell rang. Melanie strolled in moments later, a fake smile plastered on her face. "Oh, Lindsay! I didn't know you'd be here," she remarked, her tone full of faint astonishment. I turned to my parents, my voice shaking. "Are you serious? You lied to me." "Lindsay, please," Mom begged. "We just thought if you two spent some time together, you could work it out." I shook my head, tears of fury and betrayal welling up in my eyes. "You don't get it, do you? I'm not the problem here. She is." Melanie gasped, clutching her chest in mock indignation. "Me? What did I do?" I snapped. "You know exactly what you did, Melanie. You've spent our entire lives tearing me down, and I'm done pretending it's okay. I'm done being your punching bag." She smirked. "Oh, please. You're so sensitive, Lindsay. Maybe if you stopped playing the victim all the time, people would actually take you seriously." That was it. I grasped Zach's hand and turned to face my parents. "If you can't respect my boundaries, then I can't be part of this family anymore." My mother started to cry. My father looked like he wanted to say something but didn't know what. Melanie just stood there, looking as smug as ever. As we walked out, Zach squeezed my hand. "You did the right thing," he said. I wanted to believe him, but all I could feel was profound grief. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, life finally found a peaceful rhythm. Zach and I had built our sanctuary, far away from the relentless drama my family always seemed to ignite. I was still separated from my parents and Melanie, but I felt no remorse. I'd spent too much of my life bending over backward to please them. Now, my focus was squarely on my own happiness, and that happiness multiplied tenfold when Zach proposed. We were on vacation, at a breathtaking villa on a remote island, a paradise of pristine beaches and lush foliage, straight out of a dream. Zach had planned the entire trip as a surprise for our 2-year anniversary. He just told me to pack my bags, promising it would be exceptional. The proposal happened on our second night, after a romantic dinner on the balcony overlooking the ocean. As the sun melted into the horizon, painting the sky in fiery oranges and deep purples, the sound of waves crashing provided the perfect soundtrack. I was lost in the beauty when Zach suddenly dropped to one knee, a small velvet box in his palm. "Lindsay," he said, his voice steady but overflowing with emotion, "the last 2 years with you have been the happiest of my life. You've shown me what it means to truly love and be loved. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" I was so overwhelmed I could barely speak. Tears streamed down my face as I nodded, my heart threatening to burst with joy. "Yes," I finally managed. "Yes, of course I'll marry you." The ring was exquisite, a simple, elegant design, a single diamond glittering like the stars above. It wasn't gaudy, and I love that Zach had chosen something so perfectly me. We spent the rest of the evening celebrating, sipping champagne under the stars, dreaming about our future. For once, my life felt entirely mine, not defined by my family's expectations or Melanie's shadow, but by the love and joy Zach and I had created together. When we returned, we immediately began planning the wedding. Neither of us wanted anything large or ostentatious. We preferred intimacy over show. We settled on a small ceremony with just 25 guests, close friends and family who had truly supported our relationship from the beginning. Melanie, clearly, was not on that guest list. My parents' invitation, however, was a much harder decision. I wrestled with it for weeks, torn between wanting them there and fearing the drama they might bring. Finally, I decided to invite them, but I made one thing crystal clear. If they brought Melanie as a guest, they would be instantly uninvited. "This is my day," I told them, my voice unwavering. "I'm not going to let her ruin it." The venue was perfect, a quaint winery nestled in the countryside, with rolling hills and scenic views. The ceremony would be in an outdoor garden, followed by dinner and dancing beneath a canopy of fairy lights. Zach and I worked closely with Amanda, our wedding planner, who was a godsend, keeping everything on track. Of course, Melanie found out about the wedding. I'm still not sure how. My parents claimed they didn't tell her, but I wouldn't put it past them to accidentally reveal it. Once she knew, the sabotage began. It started with rumors. Melanie called up extended family members who hadn't been invited, explaining that I had purposefully excluded them because I thought I was too good for the family. She told one cousin that the wedding was being held at a fancy, costly vineyard, and that I was wasting Zach's money like it was going out of style. "She's always been jealous of me," Melanie allegedly said. "This whole wedding is just her way of trying to one-up me." I learned about these malicious whispers from my Aunt Karen, who called me one evening, genuinely disturbed. "Is it true, Lindsay, that you're not inviting anyone from your family except your parents?" she asked. "Aunt Karen, that's not true," I exclaimed, my wrath boiling over. "We're having a simple, intimate wedding, that's all. It's not about excluding anyone, it's about maintaining intimacy." "Well, Melanie's been saying some things," she admitted. "I just thought you should know." I thanked her, hung up, my hands trembling with anger. Zach found me pacing the living room, grumbling under my breath. "She's unbelievable," I complained. "She's spreading lies about me to the entire family just because I didn't invite her to my wedding." Zach wrapped his arms around me, his calm presence grounding me. "Let her say whatever she wants," he murmured. "The people that matter understand the truth. Don't let her steal your joy." He was right, of course, but it didn't make things any easier. Melanie's rumors sparked a chain reaction, and I soon found myself fielding calls and messages from distant relatives demanding to know why they hadn't been invited. It was exhausting, but I refused to let it derail my plans. When our wedding day finally arrived, I was a bundle of jitters. Not because of Melanie. Amanda had assured me the venue had strict security and no unauthorized guests would be admitted, but because I wanted everything to be perfect. Standing in the bridal suite, looking in the mirror, a profound sense of peace washed over me. My gown was simple but beautiful, a flowing A-line with delicate lace and a soft champagne color. Emily, my dearest friend, stood beside me, smiling as she adjusted my veil. "You look incredible," she said. "Zach's going to lose it when he sees you." The ceremony was everything I had dreamed of. As I walked down the aisle, my heart leaped when I saw Zach waiting for me, his eyes full of love and pride. We exchanged meaningful, deeply personal vows, and when we said "I do," there wasn't a dry eye in the garden. The reception was equally wonderful. The food was exquisite, the wine flowed freely, and the dance floor was filled with laughter and pure happiness. My parents behaved appropriately, though I could sense my mother's discomfort without Melanie there. Still, for once, the spotlight was squarely on me, on Zach and me, and the beautiful love we shared. As the night drew to a close, I sat with Emily and a few other close friends, reminiscing. "You did it," Emily remarked, raising her glass. "You stuck up for yourself and found happiness. That's what truly matters." After the wedding, Zach and I hoped Melanie would finally leave us alone. But of course, that was too much to ask. Instead, her toxic behavior worsened. She began spreading even more ridiculous accusations, not just about me, but about Zach too. According to Melanie, Zach had a history of dominating partners, had been sued for fraud, and was using his fortune to manipulate me into separating from my family. It was all utterly false, but the sheer audacity of it was appalling. The worst part was that her lies started to damage Zach's professional reputation. One of his business associates, Mark, called him to inquire about the supposed lawsuit. At first, Zach was perplexed, but when Mark mentioned he'd heard it through a mutual acquaintance, it was crystal clear that Melanie was the source. This was the last straw for Zach. He wasn't one to unnecessarily escalate situations, but this wasn't just petty family drama anymore. It was defamation, and it was threatening his livelihood. Zach decided to pursue legal action. He contacted his lawyer, Andrea, a no-nonsense woman who had handled his business contracts for years. Andrea acted swiftly. "We'll draft a cease and desist letter immediately," she told him. "If she doesn't comply, we'll escalate to a defamation lawsuit." The letter was mailed a few days later. I hadn't seen it, but Zach assured me it was clear and left no room for interpretation. It detailed all of Melanie's fraudulent assertions, demanded she stop making defamatory statements immediately, and warned that failure to comply would result in legal action. Zach's tone when discussing it was calm but forceful. "This isn't just about us, Lindsay," he told me. "People like Melanie won't stop unless forced to. She needs to learn that her actions have repercussions." Melanie, as you can imagine, did not take it well. The day after she received the letter, she called my mother in tears, accusing Zach of bullying her and trying to destroy her life. My mother, of course, called me right away, her voice laced with that familiar guilt-tripping concern. "Lindsay, what is happening?" "Melanie claims Zach is threatening her with a lawsuit. Isn't that a little extreme?" "She's lying, Mom," I responded, trying to remain calm. "Zach's not threatening her. He's urging her to stop telling lies about us. She, not him, is ruining people's lives here." "But she's your sister," my mother explained, as if that justified everything. "Can't you two just talk it out?" "No, Mom," I snapped. "We tried that, and it obviously didn't work. This is more than just family conflict. She's breaking the law. If you don't comprehend that, perhaps you're part of the problem." Mom didn't say much after that, but I knew she still supported Melanie. It stung, but by this stage I was used to it. As the legal pressure mounted, Melanie's life began to unravel. Her toxic behavior had alienated many of her friends over the years, and this latest incident seemed to be the final straw for quite a few of them. I heard through the grapevine that numerous people had cut ties with her, tired of the constant manipulation and drama she brought into their lives. Sarah, one of her closest friends, even reached out to me. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry for ever believing Melanie's lies," Sarah told me. "She's been saying nasty things about you and Zach for years, but now I realize it's all envy. She's toxic, and I can't be around her any longer." It was reassuring to hear, but also heartbreaking in a way. Melanie had always been surrounded by people who adored her, yet her own actions had systematically caused her to lose relationships. Now, those bridges were crumbling, one by one. She was also struggling financially. Jason, her husband, had recently lost his job, and without his income, they were barely keeping up their extravagant lifestyle. Melanie refused to downsize, convinced they could wait it out, but debts were piling up: credit card, house bills, and the sheer cost of maintaining their fashionable facade. Eventually, everything came crashing down. Jason filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. From what I heard, he was simply exhausted by her constant need for attention and her refusal to take responsibility for her actions. Melanie's situation deteriorated even further after her divorce. She lost her house and most of her belongings, eventually forced to move back in with my parents. I wish I could feel sorry for her, but I honestly don't. Melanie had spent her entire life putting others down to boost her own status, and now, she was finally reaping what she'd sown. Even so, it was hard not to feel some residual anger when I heard my mother discuss helping Melanie get back on her feet. "She's going through a tough time," Mom said one day during one of our few phone calls. "We're just trying to be there for her." "Of course you are," I replied, unable to hide my contempt. "Hasn't she always been your priority?" "That's not fair, Lindsay," Mom exclaimed, protective as usual. "She is your sister. Don't you worry about what happens to her." "No, Mom," I replied simply. "I care about what happens to me and Zach, and I'm not going to let her drag us down with her." It was a harsh statement, but it was true. I'd spent far too much of my life worrying about Melanie, about how to navigate her drama, and how to convince my parents of the harm she was inflicting. I was now focused on defending myself and the life Zach and I had built. Over time, Melanie seemed to fade from my radar. The legal letter had worked. She stopped spreading lies about us, and we were finally at peace. Zach and I immersed ourselves in our careers and our relationship, creating a life founded on love and mutual respect. My relationship with my parents remained tense, but I had come to accept that certain things would never change. Every now and then, I'd receive updates about Melanie from other family members. She was still living with my parents, struggling to reconstruct her life. Part of me wondered if she'd learned anything from all of this, but I doubted it. Melanie was, and likely always would be, the type of person who rarely changes. Finally, I understood. I didn't need her to provide me with closure. I didn't require an apology or recognition of the grief she had inflicted. What I needed was to move forward, leave the past behind, and concentrate on my future. And that's exactly what I did. It took years, literally years, for my parents to truly understand what I had been trying to tell them my entire life. For as long as I could remember, they had overlooked, justified, and even glorified Melanie's behavior, no matter how toxic or harmful it was. But as the full, devastating consequences of her actions became glaringly apparent, they could no longer ignore the reality. I first noticed a shift during a phone call with my father. Melanie had moved back in with them months prior, and I had kept my distance. Our occasional chats with my parents were always strained. This time, however, my father sounded different, tired, worn out in a way I had never heard before. "How are you doing, Lindsay?" he asked, his tone surprisingly mild. "I feel like we haven't really talked in a while." "I'm fine, Dad," I replied cautiously. "Busy with work, you know." There was a pause, then a heavy sigh. I wanted to say I'm sorry. The words caught me completely off guard. "I'm sorry for what?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "For everything," he said. "For not listening to you. For not seeing what Melanie was doing. Your mom and we've talked, and we realize how badly we've let you down." I wasn't sure what to say. 4 years, I had fantasized about hearing those words, my parents finally admitting the pain they had caused by continuously siding with Melanie. But now that the moment had arrived, it felt surreal. "Dad," I asked softly, "what brought this on?" "Melanie," he acknowledged, a weariness in his voice. "Having her back in the house, it's been eye-opening, to say the least. The way she speaks to your mother, the way she blames everyone else for her problems, it's exhausting. It's made us realize that we've allowed her to get away with far too much for far too long. Part of me wanted to feel fully vindicated, but mostly I just felt tired. I appreciate the apology," I responded, "but it doesn't change what happened." "I know," he replied swiftly. "I don't expect it to. I just wanted you to know that we see it now. And we apologize." A few days later, my mother called. She was never as direct as my father, but her message was consistent. "We didn't do right by you, Lindsay," she admitted, her voice thick with sorrow. "We ignored Melanie's behavior because it was easier than confronting it, and as a result, we hurt you. I'm truly sorry." Hearing their comments was a significant step forward, but it didn't erase years of sorrow. "I need time," I explained. "This isn't something I can just forgive overnight." They seemed to understand, and for the first time, they didn't try to rush me. Not long after, I received a letter. It came from Melanie. Seeing her handwriting on the envelope filled me with dread. I hesitated, wondering if I should even open it, but curiosity won out. The letter was long, many pages of carefully written text. As I read it, I felt a whirlwind of emotions. Melanie apologized for everything. The lies, the manipulation, the years spent undermining me and making me feel small. She stated that envy had driven most of her actions, though she didn't delve into what exactly she was envious of. She apologized for spreading stories about Zach, for causing tension at family events, and for capitalizing on years of favoritism. "I know I've hurt you in ways I can't undo," she wrote, "but I want you to know that I sincerely apologize. I've done a lot of reflecting, and I realize how toxic I've been, not only to you but to everyone around me. I don't expect you to forgive me, but maybe someday we can start over." Reading her words, I felt a flicker of something I couldn't quite place, perhaps belief, or maybe a tiny spark of hope. But overall, I felt cautious. Melanie's past behavior had taught me not to take her words at face value. A single letter, no matter how passionate, wasn't enough to repair the immense damage she had done. I showed Zach the letter that evening, and we discussed it over dinner. "Do you believe she means it?" I asked him. He thought for a moment. "Maybe. But even if she does, you don't have to accept her back into your life immediately." "I know," I replied. "I just don't want to make the wrong decision. If she is serious, perhaps I should give her a chance." "Giving her a chance doesn't mean jumping back into the relationship as if nothing happened," Zach reminded me. "You can take it slow. Set boundaries. Protect yourself." He was right, of course. If I was going to explore the prospect of rebuilding a relationship with Melanie, it had to be on my terms. For the next 2 weeks, I tucked the letter away, reviewing it sometimes, but without responding. I wasn't ready, and I didn't want to rush into anything. Meanwhile, my parents continued to work on repairing our relationship. They called frequently, not to guilt or pressure me, but simply to check in. It was a subtle but significant difference, and I appreciated it more than I let on. Melanie had recently started visiting a therapist, my mother told me. "I think she's really trying to change," she said. "She's been talking about all the things she wants to do differently, how she wants to make amends." "That's good," I remarked guardedly, "but I'm still not ready." "I understand," Mom murmured, and for once, She seemed to genuinely mean it. Months passed, and I began to experience a profound sense of closure, not because I had fully forgiven Melanie or completely repaired our relationship, but because I was finally enjoying life on my own terms. My career was thriving, my relationship with Zach was stronger than ever, and I had surrounded myself with people who genuinely cared about me. My connection with my parents was gradually improving, and while not ideal, it was a definite step in the right direction. I eventually decided to write Melanie back. My letter was brief and to the point. I thanked her for her apology and acknowledged her efforts, but I made it clear that I required time and distance. If we're ever going to rebuild our relationship, I wrote, it has to be on new terms. Terms that respect my boundaries and my well-being. I had no idea how she would react, and honestly I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I wasn't looking for her approval or trying to please her. I was living for myself, and that felt utterly liberating. In the end, I recognized that forgiveness isn't about condoning someone's behavior or pretending the damage never occurred. It's about releasing yourself from the weight of that pain and choosing to move forward in a way that preserves your serenity. And that's exactly what I plan to do. Life has a funny way of shocking you when you least expect it. After years of wrestling with my own insecurities, navigating family dysfunction, and constantly questioning my worth, I suddenly found myself in a place where everything was finally clicking. Not because life had magically become flawless, but because I had stopped striving to meet everyone else's expectations. Professionally, my graphic design career wasn't just flourishing, it was soaring. Over the years, I developed a strong portfolio and garnered significant recognition for my work. The true turning point came when I entered an industry competition with a campaign I'd created for a sustainable fashion firm. I poured my heart and soul into that project, crafting a visual identity that not only captured the brand's essence but pushed the boundaries of traditional design. When I received an email alerting me that I had won the coveted International Design Excellence Award, I simply couldn't believe it. At first, I thought it was an error. I must have read that email a dozen times before it finally sank in. Winning that award was more than just a recognition of my skills. It was a powerful affirmation that I could achieve greatness entirely on my own terms. The ceremony was held in New York City, and Zach insisted on accompanying me. "This is your moment," he said proudly. I wouldn't miss it for the world. The event was a whirlwind. I walked into the grand ballroom feeling a mix of nerves and exhilaration, surrounded by some of the most prominent personalities in the design industry. When my name was called and I walked up to the stage to receive the prize, the applause was thunderous. I delivered a brief speech, thanking those who had helped me along the way and dedicating the award to the mentors who had pushed me to pursue my goals. Following the ceremony, numerous industry executives approached me, including Isabel Marshan, the creative director of a huge advertising agency. She told me my work was refreshing and bold, and she wanted to collaborate on a new project. That conversation marked the beginning of a professional connection that would lead to countless opportunities for me in the years ahead. Winning the award also spurred me to launch an initiative I'd been planning for years, a mentorship program for aspiring designers. I called it Creative Futures. The purpose was simple: to provide insights, guidance, and opportunities for budding designers who didn't have typical entry points into the industry. Setting up the program was no easy task. I collaborated with local design schools and industry professionals, securing funding through grants and sponsorships. Zach, my incredibly supportive husband, offered to help with the business side of things, connecting me with potential sponsors through his own network. By the time the program began, we had a roster of brilliant mentors and a group of bright, hungry students ready to make their mark on the world. The first year of the program was a resounding success. One of our ments, a talented young woman named Tasha, went on to secure an internship at a renowned design firm, and several others earned scholarships to further their education. Seeing their progress and excitement reminded me why I fell in love with design in the first place. While I was busy developing Creative Futures, Zach was making his own monumental waves. His technology company had evolved from a modest, scrappy startup to an industry leader. After years of steady growth, Zach decided to expand internationally, establishing offices in London, Tokyo, Sydney, and Berlin. The expansion was a massive undertaking. Zach spent months traveling between locations, engaging with local teams, and overseeing the setup of each new office. It was demanding work, but he relished the challenge. "I've always wanted to take this company global," he told me one night during dinner. "And now it's actually happening. It feels surreal." Despite his intense schedule, Zach always found time for us, whether it was setting aside an hour for a quiet dinner at home or surprising me with a spontaneous weekend getaway. He never let work come between us. His ability to balance ambition and love was just one of the many reasons I respected him so deeply. As our careers flourished, we began to think about what we wanted our lives to look like in the years ahead. We both loved the vibrant energy of the city, but we also craved a retreat, somewhere we could truly unwind and recharge away from the constant hustle and bustle. And that's how we ended up buying the lake house. Zach first stumbled upon the idea. He'd been browsing real estate listings one evening when he found it, a magnificent property on the banks of Lake Tahoe. The house itself was spectacular, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering breathtaking views of the water, a massive terrace perfect for entertaining, and a private dock for boating and kayaking. "Take a look at this," Zach said, sliding his laptop across the table. "I think we should go see it." I scrolled through the photographs, my heart skipping a beat. "It's beautiful," I said, "but do we really need a place like this?" "It's not about need, Lindsay," Zach replied with a smile. "It's about creating a space where we can truly unwind and enjoy life. We've worked hard, and I think we deserve this." A few weeks later, we flew to Tahoe to tour the property. The instant we stepped inside, I knew it was the one. The house felt like a dream come true, luxurious, yet intimate, with every detail thoughtfully designed. By the time we left, we had made an offer. Having the lake house felt like the culmination of everything we'd worked toward. We spent our weekends there, hosting friends for barbecues on the deck, taking long walks along the shore, and relaxing by the fire pit beneath the stars. It became our haven, a place where we could escape the stresses of our demanding lives and simply revel in each other's company. Looking back on everything we'd accomplished, I couldn't help but feel profound gratitude, not just for our success, but for the winding, difficult path that had led us here. The challenges we'd faced, the lessons we'd learned, and the unwavering love that had sustained us through it all. I knew there were still more chapters to our story yet to be written, but for now I was content. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and that was more than enough. So, tell me, have you ever felt like you were living in someone else's shadow, or had to fight to be seen for who you truly are? What would you have done in my situation? Let me know in the comments below. I really want to hear your thoughts.